All right.
There we go. What is going on, everybody? It is the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Your guys, Derek and Chase, with you today, and we both have our jerseys on, and there's a reason for that, guys. Today is the first NFL scrimmage. It's the first scrimmage of the 2022 NFL season between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Las Vegas Raiders. Chase, obviously, it's the Hall of Fame game. It's obviously just a scrimmage, but how does it feel to know that NFL football is officially back?
I know it's a meaningless game, but you can't help but watch it because going so long without football, it's just a fantastic time to have it back. Whether it's a scrimmage or whether it's a regular season game, it's just good to watch some NFL football and have it back.
Yes, sir. All right. And then before we get into some of our topics for today, we have to take a quick word in remembrance of Vin Scully, the famous broadcaster, sadly passed away just yesterday at the age of 94. Scully, who lived a very long life, was born November 29th of 1927 in the Bronx, has covered a multitude of different sports throughout a 67-year career in broadcasting, most notably with his time spent with the Dodgers when they moved from New York to LA, but has been doing that for 50 plus years and has also done some other sports like NFL games, done tennis, PGA Tour, has even done a few college football things as well. Nevertheless, his last year as a broadcaster was 2016, announcing that he was retiring after 67 years of doing this in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame. Many would consider Vin Scully potentially the greatest broadcaster ever, and he is the gold standard when you think of broadcasting. Chase, obviously, you and I doing a podcast right now, obviously, people like Scully have, kind of give way to making broadcasting a very popular thing. And obviously no one has really had a tenure like Scully. And it's sad to see him, eventually leave the game. And then on top of it now is no longer with us.
Yeah, it's very, very sad to know that a guy like that who has lived a long, healthy life, doing something that he's absolutely loved to do. You've got some fantastic announcers out there, especially when it comes to the game of football. Um, you know, you hear them every single day, and when thinking about Vince Scully, like nobody ever really paid attention to him uh like in his early years, and then like as he started doing it more and more, he started perfecting his craft, and people loved the way that he was announcing and bringing it to life. Like every day that he would talk to or talk into the mic, it made them feel like they were at the game watching, and like that's what made baseball so great in the late 80s, early 90s of his broadcasting career, is because with him being in that booth, and radio being, very popular back then, hearing his voice on the radio brought them to the stadium and brought it to life. And, it's very sad to see an icon like that in the media world, pass away because, like you said, he paved the way for many people to start their radio careers, and many other people to step up. He was arguably the greatest announcer ever, and I remember the times that he was broadcasting with Bob Uecker for the Dodgers games, like having both of them in the studio, going back and forth on the mic. It was surreal and such a great time to have, in the broadcasting era. And then you got guys nowadays like, Jim Donovan for the Cleveland Browns, is a good announcer. The announcer for the Kansas City Chiefs has been pretty good, and he's got that iconic line of Kansas City after they score. You always hear stuff like that. So it's just, he's going to be missed by a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I know what it's like to be around someone that is very well known by their community. I mean, when I worked for the Cincinnati Reds in 2019, legendary radio broadcaster Marty Brennaman announced his retirement at the end of the season, and he was there for 47 years. That is actually I think they said I think it's the third longest tenure in one place of any broadcaster ever. Vin Scully obviously has the longest with 57 years. I think somebody was at like 51, and then Marty was there at 47. So, I knew what a community was like surrounded by somebody. I mean, some people have spent their entire lives listening to one guy call games for them, throughout their entire lifetime listening. And you grow up with that person, and you connect with them in a certain way when they've been in a part of your community for so long. So I got to meet Marty Brennaman. I got to talk with him several times. Great, amazing guy. And, I could only imagine the Dodger community feels, very similarly to Vin Scully and obviously the sports world. So rest in peace to a legend of the media world. And obviously Vin Scully's legacy will forever be remembered. All right, let's get into the NFL chat here. So obviously the biggest news is that the NFL stated that it is planning to appeal the Watson suspension decision by Sue Robinson. Ultimately, the NFL is again seeking a 1+ year suspension with an indefinite suspension after the 1 year. And if that doesn't end up happening and there only results in being less than a year suspension, they're looking to fine Watson up to $10 million in reprimands for this decision. So obviously, Chase, you and I talked about it a little bit before we went live. You and I obviously thought that we didn't really think that if this went to federal court, that this was going to turn out well for the NFL. I mean, what more can you say about this decision and about where we plan to go from here?
Okay, first off, Trey, congratulations on your 21st. Party it up.
Nice try.
But and also thank you for tuning in. Get other people in on this, let them know that we are live and talking football every other day. So, with the season coming closer, we need to get more people in on this channel, get them hyped for the season, and give us ideas on stuff that they want to hear and want to talk about. So if you know people that would love to tune in and hear some football stuff, bring them to this channel. But anyway, with how it's going, I don't see I want to make this clear for a lot of people, because a lot of people think that just because he's the Browns quarterback doesn't mean that everybody thinks that I am like hardcore rooting for this guy. And I want to make it clear that if he did do what he did, and I'm not saying he did and I'm not saying he didn't, we don't know the facts for sure, he should be punished to the fullest extent that he deserves. But without hardcore evidence, physical proof, and things like that, it is very difficult to do this. And the fact that with the NFL doing this appeal and making it to where they want a 12-game minimum and 1 year suspension, it's gonna be tough, because Roger Goodell just appointed that he's got the attorney general from New Jersey that handled the Ezekiel Elliott case on this to go to appeals court. The NFLPA has 1 day, they've got until tomorrow to file for a lawsuit against Roger Goodell and the NFL if they want to do that and take him to federal court. Now, if this goes on to federal court, we may see this carry out for who knows how long. It could be just a couple weeks. could be a couple months, could be the whole entire football season that we see this. And in the meantime, while that is happening, Deshaun Watson and his legal team and the NFLPA could file for a temporary restraining order, nullifying any of the suspension that he would be serving in the meantime to be ratified. So that way he could play until this all is situated out. Now, in years past, Roger Goodell won all of his federal court cases due to the fact that it was a part of the NFL and they had a federal attorney appointed to this. But now, since this was handled by a third party system, and that third party system was a retired judge who knows everything about all the laws that is supposed to go into place, read over the entire CBA, and then wrote a 16-page like a 16-page document on why she came to the conclusion that she did and why the 6 games was justified. They may hold that up in court and hold up her decision as, okay, if this federal judge said this is what he deserves, what makes you think that, I should side with you guys and give you the 17 games when this person knows all the legal aspects and wanted 6? So
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. I mean, like you said, I think we know at this point like where this is going to end up. It's just ultimately, if it ends up in federal court, does a federal judge look at the case different than what the judge that you originally signed to do? And obviously, a federal judge will probably take the word of the judge who handled the case in the first place over the minds of Roger Goodell or anything else. Because obviously all the evidence that is there has been talked about already. Like there's really not a whole lot more to add to this than what has already been shared. So at the end of the day, you're just hoping that one person's word is different than the others. And, for the NFL, I just don't know if that's going to be the case or not. Obviously, they get a different judge. Maybe that judge does feel a little differently, but it'll be interesting to say the least. But nevertheless, if this gets done, I mean, it's going to take months. Like you said, it's going to take months and months to get this through. And, by then the season's going to be over for this one. So, does that suspension get moved into next year? It'll be really, really odd nevertheless. So, let's move on to a contract extension here. It just happened today. Steelers wide receiver Deontay Johnson is now the newest wide receiver to get an extension, a 2-year deal worth $36.7 million. A little less than, what some of the bigger name wide receivers out there are getting right here. I mean, Chase, what do you think of this extension? Was it a smart idea for the Steelers to do what they did here?
Yeah, I think he is currently their number one wide receiver. George Pickens might have that chance to take that away, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think for the Steelers, it was a smart idea because he was going to be one of the hot commodities come free agency and be one of those guys that everybody's looking for to bring to their team. I mean, I looked at the NFL free agent wide receivers and for next year, and there's not a whole lot that are intriguing because a lot of them are signed for multiple years on their teams already. And now it's like you said, it's a little less of a deal than what some of these wide receivers are getting, but we also haven't seen, big play from him over the past few years. Like he had 600 and something yards his first year, like 900 is his second year, and then 1,000 this year. So like if he would have been putting up consistent, like 900, 1,000 yard seasons like every year, I could see them, paying him more. But with all their money tied up on the defensive side of the ball, they really don't have much to pay on the offensive side of the ball.
I mean, you just look at what Deontay Johnson is capable of, and I mean, you just look at his last year's stats. I mean, you're paying this guy $18.5 million basically over average for the next 2 years. And the guy just had 107 catches for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. I mean, There's guys that make stats there that won't take less than $25 million for getting that kind of stat line. So, I mean, it's impressive enough. I mean, that's great numbers. And even with like what we've been saying over the last like 3 years with Big Ben really not being the same quarterback that he was and still putting up the numbers that he was constantly doing. I mean, you're right. He is their number one receiver at this moment, at least until somebody proves otherwise that they're a better commodity. But Deontay Johnson was their number one guy. He was their playmaker. He was their most consistent weapon. And you're paying your number one $18.5 million a year. I mean, that's incredible. That's a great, great deal for the Steelers. I mean, that's a phenomenal steal. And I mean, Deontay is a fantastic wide receiver. The Steelers definitely felt that they needed to keep him around. I mean, with Claypool, Johnson, and Pickens as your wide receivers, whatever quarterback you decide to go with, I mean, there's no shortage of firepower for him to throw to. So that was a smart move by the Steelers, and it was a great contract that's going to pay dividends for the Steelers, especially on that offensive side of the ball. Now let's go to a quarterback here, and this one's some very intriguing news. Matt Stafford has been under a little bit recently, and it's been due to some elbow tendonitis. Apparently has had some pain in his throwing elbow, and that has been limiting his time in practice over the last few days, especially. Chase, obviously right now, this is not much of a concern at the moment, but I mean, is this something that you feel that the Rams are going to be concerned about with if this doesn't get fixed in the offseason, that this could potentially affect Matt Stafford going into later in the season?
I mean, it very well could. I mean, they got to question whether or not like his years in Detroit of all the abuse and the constant throwing for 4,000 yards plus every season is constant or like caught up with him now. I mean, who knows? Like he could be experiencing that, but I think that in this time with training camp here and preseason, like you've got time to rest him and see how it is and get him prepared to start for the season. So they've got time here, but I think they're going to closely monitor it, make sure. And if he does start having issues, he's going to potentially have surgery and be out for the 2020 season. And that would not be a good look for the Los Angeles Rams, especially with them wanting to try to go to back-to-back Super Bowls. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But ultimately, it leads to wonder whether or not his days in Detroit are catching up with him.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I mean, again, we would not be having this conversation if it wasn't in the throwing elbow. And, it's a long season, and if something like that, if a pain of some kind lingers on for very long, then it can really affect your playing status in the future. I mean, this year it might not do a whole lot to Stafford, maybe, but if, he plays the whole year with this problem and it doesn't get fixed, then, it could really affect, like you said, his future, and he's only in his low 30s. So, I mean, this is a guy that could still play for a multitude of years
at a high level,
healthy. Yeah. So like if he remained healthy and, if your elbow starts developing some tendonitis in it and it doesn't get fixed right away and it just lingers for a while, it's going to cut down on his playing time drastically at the end of his career. So you really hope that this is not going to be a severe issue. I hope that whatever it is, they can get it fixed rather quickly because, Matt Stafford in the NFL is a much needed thing. I would hate for him to have a nagging injury for years and then have something happen like what Andrew Luck had to deal with. So
I know I would hate to see him pull on Andrew Luck and retire early.
Yeah, I would hate to see that too.
The question I got for you, Derek, is as it is right now, with the Super Bowl ring and winning it and everything, do you see Matthew Stafford as a future Hall of Fame quarterback, or do you think that he still has to show you more before that happens?
Ah, man, I'd have to look at his numbers and everything. I would say no, because here's my thing. I have to say that because I didn't immediately answer with yes. That's my thing. I am believing in a lot of what the Hall of Famers call it, where it's like, if you have to question it, then they shouldn't be in. If you have to even think about it, if you don't have to think about it, then they deserve to be in it. But I mean, I had to think about it for a hot second. I think Matt Stafford has been a very good quarterback, but has he been an elite of the elite? No. And I just don't feel like that deserves. Yes, he won a championship in his first year with a new team. I get that. But there's a lot of circumstances that go into it. There's a lot of guys that have rings that don't go to the Hall of Fame. I don't think.
But the thing is, like, he played for Detroit most of his whole career. He took them to
I
the
understand
playoffs,
that, but the NFL does not care who you play for. It doesn't care who you play for. It talks about for the Hall of Fame, you have to transcend the game in some way. And Matt Stafford's just never done that. I thought he's always been a good quarterback. In his days in Detroit, he did as much as he could given the circumstances that were surrounding him. But obviously, it took him going to LA with a team that has bought every single big player on their team to be able to finally win the chip, right? So I get it. I think that you could definitely make the argument. And who knows who knows in 2-3 years, if he's still playing and he wins another Super Bowl, then I probably would put him in there. Because I definitely say he's a better quarterback than somebody, say, like an Eli Manning of sorts. I definitely think he's been a better quarterback and deserves the recognition. But I'm just saying, as of this moment, I'm not putting him in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, I don't know. Looking at his stats right now, for his whole career, he's got over 49,995 yards, 323 touchdowns, 161 interceptions, and a total quarterback rating of 91.1. He had one season back in 2011 where he had 5,000 yards and damn near hit that in 2012 where he had 4,967. But let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight seasons where he's had 4,200 yards or more of passing. In this last season, he had 4,886, 41 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions with a QBR of 1,029. I don't know. I think that with those stats and what he was able to do in Detroit, bringing them to the playoffs 2 years and being competitive with that team and bringing them like to relevancy, I think is enough to warrant him talks. But now that he, his first year going to a new team and then winning it all and getting a ring, I think that he's at that conversation of, yes, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Now, is he borderline? Maybe, but to me, I think he is. I think that the stats show it themselves, and I also think that with him going to the Rams in just 1 year winning a Super Bowl, that's a pretty awesome feat by itself because most new quarterbacks on a new team don't usually win a Super Bowl until 3 or 4 years with their new team.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, he came into a great situation. He came into an absolutely phenomenal situation. He came to a team that went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff as its quarterback. Okay. They had the same team that went to the Super Bowl 2 years prior to that. You just added Matt Stafford into the mix. Matt Stafford, who's clearly a way better quarterback than Jared Goff. That's a recipe to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion. It's the same team.
We've seen guys like Peyton Manning go to a new team, and it took him 4 years before he won another Super Bowl. So,
and it took him having like one of the best defenses that we've ever seen doing it. Obviously, he even admits it. Like, the defense carried him. Like, he didn't carry that team. He was statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL history that year, and they still went to the Super Bowl. because the defense was that elite and that good that, I mean, it was just so dominant. And, but I mean, don't forget the first year that he did go to Denver, they did go to the Super Bowl. They just lost. They just got whooped by the Seattle Seahawks when the Legion of Boom was at its highest peak.
Yeah, that is true.
All right, let's go from one quarterback to another. And apparently there's a quarterback battle in New York. Apparently
Joe
Flacco has that dog in him too, apparently, because Joe Flacco was asked about mentoring Zach Wilson and said obviously he would do that, but still feels he is good enough to start in this league. Now, I will say there's reports coming out, rumor reports coming out, and I told you, Chase, right before we started this, that Flacco has been outperforming Zach Wilson in practices so far. Like, Flacco has looked better than Zach Wilson. So is there merit to Flacco maybe starting for the Jets week 1?
Maybe, but I mean, Flacco over the most recent years has not proven that he can win games either. Like his last year with the Ravens, Jim Harbaugh was on the brink of getting fired as the Ravens head coach, and then Lamar Jackson took over, and the rest is history. He got an extension. Then he goes to the Broncos. The Broncos had a pretty good defense, pretty good offense, and couldn't do anything with the Broncos. Then finally goes to the Jets. He plays 2 games as the Jets starter and doesn't do much. So, I think that with them drafting Zach Wilson this high, with the upside that he has, with how good he was in college, I think that if you give him a chance to settle down, get his footing, and you actually, develop him the right way, he could be a great quarterback in this league. But it may take some time. Giving up on a guy after just one bad year and, a potential, bad start to training camp is not a good look. I mean, realistically, it takes 3 years for them to fully judge a quarterback in whether or not you want to keep him, extend him, or whether or not you've made a mistake drafting a guy. And I think that Zach Wilson is primed to take a big leap forward this year, and he's going to be the sole reason whether or not the Jets make it to a wild card spot or whether or not they are bounced out of the playoffs. But I think that, a lot of people were so happy with after he came back from his injury last year, he started playing to the level of competition that they expected and what they saw at BYU. His last few games with the Jets, he threw only 4 interceptions and had a QBR of like 95 or higher. So there's that spark of they see the guy that they want. It's just a matter of bringing that out into fruition. And I think that, these reports in training camp, it's very early. You're just getting back to football. You're trying to get your feet under you. I think that if you give him like a few preseason games and see how he does, and then give him the first few games of the season, he might be back to the Zach Wilson that we've all seen before, or he may be last year's Zach. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
but I do think that he deserves to be the starting quarterback.
I look at it from the perspective of obviously Joe Flacco is a veteran in this league, has been in here for a long, long time. And do I think he's more polished than Zach Wilson at the moment? I definitely think he is. Like you said, with the big playability at times and, being able to mold into something, Zach Wilson can definitely do that. But I mean, when you're talking about what a guy can do for you right at the moment, I mean, I'll be completely honest. This is the most talent that Joe Flacco has had on his offense since he won the Super Bowl way back when with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, the amount of first round and second round guys on this offense. I mean, look at Garrett Wilson, first rounder, Corey Davis, first rounder, Elijah Moore, second rounder, Denzel Mims, second rounder, CJ Uzama, one of the better tight ends in the league, Breece Hall, you just got first round. I mean, the talent he has. What's up?
Breece Hall was a second rounder.
Second round. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just saw that right there. I mean, just the amount of insane talent that is on this offensive roster, it's just phenomenal. And I just look at it from the sense that Flacco can now put himself in a situation where he could, have one of the better years he's had in a while with this team. And now he has the confidence to be able to go out and know that his guys are going to make plays. I think it's definitely possible that Joe Flacco could, but if I had to take a guess, I would probably say Zach Wilson's going to be the starter, because I think what they think is that it's going to ruin Zach Wilson's confidence if they take him out after this point. It's kind of how it is in the new thing. It's kind of how it is with the quarterback mentality nowadays, is that you demote a quarterback, they immediately lose all confidence, or they just hate you and then they just want to go. Like, nobody wants competition anymore at the quarterback position. So you questioning if Zach Wilson's ready or not, you definitely could say next year or 2 years from now, Zach Wilson could be the guy, but that won't matter. It only affects right now, and Zach Wilson may not recover to your feelings as of right now. So yeah, if I had to take a guess, Wilson probably would be the starter, but I would definitely say Flacco. It'd be better for the Jets to start Flacco week 1. That's just my opinion.
It's very, very tough, because yes, Flacco is a guy that has won a Super Bowl. He is a guy that has led his team to countless playoff games, won countless playoff games, knows the NFL inside and out right now. But I think in terms of a guy that has more potential, upside, athletic talent, athletic ability, stronger arm, Zach Wilson possesses all of them. Now, if you really are desperate and want to win games like immediately right away, yes, Joe Flacco's the time to start. But if the Jets are wanting to do this right and want to build a team for the future and be one of the AFC powerhouses in the next couple of years, the right way to do this is to keep continuing to build the offense and defense, and then see if Zach Wilson is the guy. If he's not, then in another year or so, go after another quarterback, and then you have the team primed, prepped, and ready to go for whoever takes over. Because if this team is as young as they are now with the rookie contracts that they have, and you bring in a rookie quarterback in a couple of years who is dominant, this Jets team could take off and be one of the better teams in the AFC in the next few years. But I think that that Joe Douglas wants to continue doing this right, and wants to lead this team to the playoffs and eventually a Super Bowl.
All right. Well, there's been a recent debate. I think it started today that there was the debate on who is a better receiver, Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp. Now, obviously, Justin Jefferson said, I respect the hell out of Cooper, but I would definitely put myself above him. And Cooper said, I respect his opinion, but I can also respectfully disagree. Chase, who is the better receiver, Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson?
Justin Jefferson.
Okay. All right. I was not expecting you to answer that way.
I did put Cooper Kupp number 2 in my wide receiver rankings. I will say that. What he has done is nothing short of fantastic. He has he's a Triple Crown winner, led the league in touchdowns, yards, receptions, was a Super Bowl MVP, and I'm not taking that away from him. But I think in terms of sheer talent, what he's capable of, what he's got to work with, I think that Justin Jefferson has all of the traits of a natural born wide receiver than what Cooper Kupp does. Cooper Kupp, yes, is a talented guy by himself, but Justin Jefferson is all around one of the most polished wide receivers in the league. And the reason why his stats are not more inflated than what they are is because of his quarterback play in Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins
And the
is
offensive scheme.
yes, and I think that it is handcuffing Justin Jefferson a little bit. Now, granted, we have seen him hit over 1,000 yards his first few years. He held the rookie receiving yard record that was previously held by I think Randy Moss, or no, OBJ before then, and then Randy Moss before that. And then Jamar broke it last year. But I think that if you had like Justin Jefferson on the Rams and Stafford was throwing him the ball, there's no question about it. His stats would be a lot better. But I think Stafford is a much better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. And we've seen in years past with Calvin Johnson that Stafford, when he finds a receiver that he really likes, he will constantly keep throwing them the football and keep, showing them the reason why they've got that connection and everything like that. And it's a guy that he can trust. So Cooper Kupp's stats kept getting inflated because Stafford kept throwing him the ball. Justin Jefferson doesn't really have that from Kirk Cousins because of the offensive scheme and because Cousins is a lot worse than Stafford. So I would have to go Justin Jefferson as a better wide receiver, but it is very, very close.
Obviously, two guys that are top 5 in the league at what they do. I mean,
yes.
And you could argue that, for the reasons that Cooper Kupp, does what he does could be the reason why you would put him as the better receiver over Justin Jefferson. But I mean, if I'm looking at this from the standpoint of one-on-one, which guy would I prefer to have run a route and make that catch and make it to where I know I'm going to get the win on it? I'm going Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's the more complete wide receiver when it comes to size, speed, athleticism, ball skills, everything. And like you said, Cooper Kupp has been in a system in which he has had a spectacular offensive coordinator and head coach. The offensive scheme that the Rams have ran over the last 4 years has been devised perfectly for Cooper Kupp to be able to utilize his skill set and to make it work. Justin Jefferson is really just going out there and making this all work on his own, by his own accord, really. And you do also have to, we can't just say that obviously Cooper Kupp has had, some average quarterback play from Jared Goff, obviously, when he started his career. But when you look at it from last year, Cooper Kupp, again, showed you what he can do with a really good quarterback. And when Cousins has been good at best throughout his entire career. So, Justin Jefferson, I would just take him slightly over Kupp, just due to the fact that, again, he's taller, he's longer, he's faster, he's more athletic, and he, the production matches the same thing that Cooper Kupp does. So I'll live with it.
I'm looking at the stats right now. Guess how many receptions Cooper Kupp had last year compared to Justin Jefferson?
I think, didn't Jefferson have like 120 or something?
108. Cooper Kupp had 145. That is almost 30 more. 100. That is almost.
I didn't realize Kupp had 145 last year. My God.
Yeah, he had almost 30 more than Justin Jefferson. He had over almost 40 more targets. He had 191 targets while Justin Jefferson had 167. And the fact that, Justin Jefferson had 30 less receptions, he was only behind by 400 yards. Kupp had 1947, Jefferson had 1616.
Yeah, that's freaking crazy. Holy
cow. Jefferson had 10 touchdowns, Cooper Kupp had 16. The yards per reception was 13.4 for Kupp. Jefferson actually had more. He had 15. So, with their abilities and everything that they've done, I think that it is slightly more towards Justin Jefferson, with the amount of, receptions difference that there is. Like I said, you got Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball compared to Matthew Stafford for Cooper Kupp. So it is very interesting to see who's like what it's going to be this year, especially now that the Rams have Allen Robinson and Van Jefferson on there still. So we'll have to wait and see. But I do think Justin Jefferson is a better wide receiver. Now, in terms of the rankings that we did the last show, it is note to say that we put Cooper Kupp at 2 because of the historic season that he had. And you don't usually see a Triple Crown winner for receivers very often. So,
yep, I totally agree with that. All right, the last thing that we'll talk about before we hop off and, get ready to play some COD and then also watch the NFL game as well. One other big news that happened was Trevor Penning, the draft pick for the New Orleans Saints in the first round this year. Penning was kicked out of practice on Wednesday. Was kicked out of practice on Wednesday after starting a fight with his teammates 3 straight days in a row. Now, Chase, I mean, if anyone watched Penning in college and did any scouting on him, they knew this guy was, he was a guy that definitely liked to start controversy. He plays very physical, is very aggressive, but he plays through snaps. He does some things that a lot of times will get people angry, like going through blocks, going through the whistle, and sometimes pushing and shoving guys to kind of get under people's skin. This is something that I'm sure the Saints probably either overlooked or just didn't care about when they drafted him. But, I mean, do you think that this is anything like, I mean, obviously, he's not the first person that's ever been kicked out of practice, but I mean, it's not a good look when you're a rookie and you're expected to start and you're picking fights with your teammates, not just once, but like multiple days in a row. And then you have to be kicked out of the building because of it.
Yeah, I don't think the Saints made a bad choice choosing him. I think that he is like uber talented, and he's gonna be a great player for them. But I think that they need to do a better job at making sure that he knows his place and knows what he needs to do. I think if Sean Payton was still there, this would not be tolerated. That would have been a one and done for the first time, and then after that, Sean probably would have been fighting to kick him off the entire team rather than just out of practice. But, Dennis Allen, with his first year as a head coach, he wants to try to mend fences and make everything work. But I think that when you're so talented and you're good at your position, sometimes anger issues or things like that can be overlooked if the talent is there to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's just nonsense. I mean, look, I loved Penning for the fact that his aggressive play style is definitely something every person wants in an offensive lineman, but you got to also learn when to chill out. I mean, you're starting fights with guys, and these are like guys that are on your team too. Like, I mean, fights happen every once in a while. Of course they do. But, when it's happening so often that a coach has to kick you out of practice, it's letting you know very quickly that, you got a serious issue with your temperament and your style of how you're doing things. And you need to correct it. Like, I mean, there's no reason to be, being that way with your own teammates. So Penning, dude, pay attention to what I'm saying here. Just stop causing fights. Just stop causing fights. Once a week. Okay, that's fine. Once a week, that's fine. They won't throw you out of practice for doing that. But 3 straight practices in a row, bro, you need to chill. All right.
He's a guy that likes to play aggressive. I mean,
yeah, that's cool. But at the same time, also you know, when you're talking about like doing it where, you know, you're pushing guys after the whistles are blown, you're grabbing onto guys' face masks, trying to intimidate people. You know, you just need to stop, you know, like doing that kind of stuff with doing that kind of stuff to enemy players, not a terrible thing. You know what's funny? Something just popped up about Trevor Penning on my timeline on Twitter. I don't know what it is, but we're going to watch it together. Hold on a second. 1 second, Cody.
What the heck?
That's the first thing I see. Hold on.
If you would have asked me what's my favorite thing about football, like just ask that.
What is your favorite thing about football?
Hold on, I want to.
If you would have asked me what's my favorite thing about football, like just ask that.
What is your favorite thing about football?
Legally assaulting the person across from me.
That's a little weird. Okay.
What the heck?
That's pretty funny. I mean, like I get it to an extent, but like, okay, that looked like a killer's eye right there. Jesus.
What the heck, Derek?
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoy football being back. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Tune in on Sunday for the next episode. We greatly appreciate it. Get this word out there. Have more views. Get the views up to at least 10 for our next live stream, so that way we can grow this channel and keep it going and get bigger. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you later.